Welcome to the podcast summary of Hispanics in the United States Marine Corps. This episode is really about two things at once: a long record of service that stretches across almost every major Marine conflict, and the gap between how much Hispanic Marines have contributed and how unevenly that contribution has been counted, recognized, and represented. There's battlefield heroism in here, but also leadership, immigration, women's service, and what happens after the uniform comes off. Taken together, it's a history that's bigger than one category or one statistic. Hispanic Marines have been present in virtually every major conflict involving the Corps, from the Boxer Rebellion and the Banana Wars to World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Beirut, Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. The tricky part is that for a lot of that history, the military didn't keep separate Hispanic statistics. That really didn't start until the 1970s. So earlier participation is harder to measure than people might assume. And even the estimates have problems, because surname-based methods miss plenty of Hispanics, whose names don't read as Hispanic on paper. People of direct Spanish descent could also be counted simply as European American. That gets to an important point. In this context, Hispanic is treated as an ethnicity, not a race. So someone can be Hispanic and also belong to different racial or religious categories, which makes the record more complicated than a neat spreadsheet. Since 2003, service members have also been able to identify by race without selecting Hispanic ethnicity, which can undercount Hispanic participation in Defense Department data. So even the modern numbers come with a little asterisk attached. One other difference from Army history is that the Marine Corps never created a Hispanic-oriented unit like the Army's Puerto Rican 65th Infantry Regiment. Hispanic Marines generally served in integrated formations, which meant the story was woven through the Corps rather than set apart from it. That story includes some extraordinary combat heroism. 13 Marines of Hispanic descent received the Medal of Honor. The first was Private France Silva, recognized for defending the Peking Legation during the Boxer Rebellion. It's an early example of a pattern that keeps showing up again and again. The article connects Hispanic Marine identity with repeated acts of self-sacrifice, especially the kind that's hard to even say out loud without stopping for a second. Marines like Harold Gonsalves, Baldomero Lopez, Fernando Garcia, and Edward Gomez threw themselves onto grenades to save others. There's also Guy Gabaldon, whose story stands apart because it wasn't about one split-second act so much as a strange, dangerous kind of battlefield leadership. At Saipan, serving as an interpreter and often working alone ahead of the lines, he persuaded more than 1,000 Japanese soldiers and civilians to surrender. He was initially nominated for the Medal of Honor. His Silver Star was later upgraded to the Navy Cross, which still leaves you with the sense that his record was remarkable by any standard. The history doesn't stop at individual bravery. It also moves into doctrine, command, and institutional leadership. Pedro Augusto del Valle became the first Hispanic Marine general, and before World War II, he helped develop influential amphibious warfare doctrine, especially around coordinated ship-to-shore assaults and opposed landings. In Marine terms, that's foundational stuff. He later commanded artillery at Guadalcanal, served as commander of the 1st Marine Division, and during Okinawa ordered the capture of Shuri Castle. So his career shows a shift from distinction in combat to real operational command authority. Others expanded that precedent. Joseph de Medina became the first Marine general assigned to command naval ships, and in 2006, Angela Salinas became the first Hispanic woman Marine general. Those milestones matter because they show advancement at the top, even while broader representation in leadership has lagged behind. By the period discussed, Hispanics had become the Marine Corps' largest minority group. They were about 15% of enlisted Marines when the Iraq War began, and that rose to around 18%. At the same time, the U.S. Hispanic population had passed 50 million in the 2010 estimate, so the Corps saw a large and growing community with strong ties to service. The Marine Corps actively recruited Hispanics through Spanish-language advertising and Hispanic recruiters, and it pointed to strong community support along with higher-than-average rates of boot camp completion, service completion, and re-enlistment. But the growth wasn't reflected evenly across the ranks. Hispanics made up about 18% of the Marine population, yet only around 5.5% of officers. That mismatch led to programs aimed at helping enlisted Marines attend college and earn commissions. In plain language, the Corps could see the pipeline problem and was trying to widen it. Hispanic women's participation grew as cultural expectations changed, and as the Marine Corps Women's Reserve opened administrative opportunities during World War II. Rose Franco later became the Corps' first Hispanic female chief warrant officer, which marks one kind of progress inside the institution. At the same time, women were still barred from many combat specialties during the period covered. Official policy drew one line, but real operational life kept stepping over it. In Iraq, female Marines carried out dangerous checkpoint, search, communications, and counter-IED duties. So even when the paperwork said non-combat, the risk was very real. The careers and deaths of Ramona Valdez and Juana Navarro make that painfully clear. Restrictions on formal combat roles did not protect women from lethal conditions. Another major thread here is immigrant service. For many non-citizens, the Marine Corps offered not just a job or a mission, but a path towards citizenship. A 2002 executive order accelerated naturalization for qualifying service members, and by 2005, 59 immigrant casualties had received posthumous citizenship. José Antonio Gutiérrez is one of the most affecting examples. He was born in Guatemala, came to the United States after an extremely difficult childhood as an undocumented teenager, became one of the first U.S. service members killed in Iraq, and was granted citizenship after his death. Citizenship also shaped what service members could do while alive. Non-citizens could enlist, but generally could not become commissioned officers. That mattered for careers like the one pursued by Mexican-born Marine José Vázquez, who needed citizenship to keep moving toward an aviation electrician path. So legal status wasn't an abstract category. It affected mobility, opportunity, and belonging. One of the strongest arguments in this history is that Hispanic Marines shaped American life far beyond the Corps itself. You see that in space exploration, with NASA astronauts Joseph Acaba, Carlos Noriega, and George Zamka. You see it in sports and public culture, with figures like Roberto Clemente, Rod Carruthers-Williams, Lee Trevino, and Freddie Fender. And you see it in high-risk public service with people like Enrique Camarena in the DEA and Nicholas Estevillo, who became the first Hispanic NYPD chief of patrol. That wider legacy matters because it reframes military service as one chapter in a larger civic story. The Marine experience didn't stay inside the barracks or on the battlefield. So the big picture is pretty clear. Hispanic Marines were there early. They were there often, and they shaped the Corps at every level from frontline sacrifice to senior leadership. The numbers don't always capture that cleanly, but the history does. And honestly, sometimes the footnotes tell you almost as much as the medals. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.